the gospel, I decided I was going to preach from the end of Hebrews today. You do that when you're leaving and get away with murder. But at the conclusion of Hebrews, the writer addresses the church. He kind of reminds the church what it's to be about. And he says, "Let mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that some have entertained angels without knowing it." He says more, but I'm going to leave it at that. I went to seminary in 1972, just a little bit later than they mentioned here. And from that time on, I've worked in the church all those years. Alice graduated college the following spring. We got married that summer of '73. And since we began our life as a church, we have never, either of us, lived within a 3-hour drive of our families. That's not unusual in the life of the church. You go where you're called, and you figure out how to do that. You go as a stranger. And at first it was hard. I think it was especially hard for Alice being so far away from her parents and her sister. But pretty quickly, we learned to make the congregations our extended family. And as the years went on, our boys were blessed with surrogate grandparents around us again and again. And we relied upon those relationships. They were important to us. We had 3 parishes. We had, my first church was down in Louisville, North Carolina, a small church out in the country, and they helped me to learn what it was to be a pastor. They loved me through my mistakes, and for that I will always be eternally grateful. I continue to be in a relationship with them after all these years. Then we spent most of our time up in Warren, Pennsylvania, and then came to Elizabethtown in the last years. And at each place, we were blessed with meaningful relationships. When I retired from Christ E-Town, came face to face with the policy of the synod that said that when a pastor leaves the parish, he's not to worship in that particular parish. I think that's a good rule for the church, because it keeps you from sticking your nose in where it doesn't belong. But it's hard for the pastor and his family. We felt orphaned, frankly. I mean, we're that distance from our parents, our brothers and sisters, and now from the congregation we've gotten to know. And so it was in that fashion that we came to you. Orphans, strangers, seeking and needing a relationship. And when we came in here the first time, it was clear to me that this was an energetic place, lots going on. I like that. Knew Pastor Mike a little bit, knew Michelle a little bit, and was appreciative of their ministry. It struck me that this place was very Lutheran in that we were very reticent to speak to one another. You know, we wanted somebody to say, "Hi, how you doing? Are you new?" But we took the Lutheran approach. If you're not sure, right? If you're not sure, you don't speak. And the fact that we have 3 services and we're never together makes it all the more difficult. You don't really get to know who's who in many cases. And so at first it didn't feel real comfortable, but we got involved with the adult Sunday school class, and they took us in and they embraced us, and we were just starting to feel really comfortable and good about being here. And then the synod called, and they said, "Would you be willing to take an interim at this church that is without a pastor. If you go to be an interim pastor, it means that that congregation doesn't have a pastor, and you kind of shepherd them through the process until they get a new pastor. And so I went to Newville. Then when I said, where are we going? They said, Newville. I said, where is that? Well, it turns out it's 60 miles away. And I did that for the next year. And then the Sunday after I finished at Newville, I started another interim at St. Matthew's Lutheran Church in Lancaster. And then in the fall of 2012, I was doing that interim in Lancaster, and Pastor Martin called and said, how long are you going to be there? I don't know. He says, well, would you consider coming and giving me a hand? Pastor Katie's taking another call, and I'm going to need some help. So then I had to decide whether to come here or to go to another interim that the synod wanted me to be a part of. And I decided that I would rather try to build up a congregation that I was a member of. And so we came to you a second time, a stranger, because almost as soon as we joined, we went off to do these interims. You guys didn't know us again. And so I started the first day of 2013 here. And I still remember well the first Sunday I was here. I preached. It was Pastor Mike Smart that night. He says, put this guy to work, right? So I preached, and at the end of the service, I went around to the back as I have done every Sunday since, to greet people. And I remember the overwhelming response of people. I got knocked down at the door, and she stampeded out of the church afterwards. Weren't used to having somebody there. The next week was a little bit better. People began to slow down at the back of the church, kind of like, when you're in your car and you're coming up on a speed bump, you slow down. That's what I felt like the second week. It looked like a speed bump. But over time, we've built a relationship, right? We've built a relationship that has, for some of us, become very meaningful. For some of us, it's been important. I mention all of this to you because soon there will be another stranger standing at the back door. And I hope that you will greet that person with I guess, an openness that maybe is not your normal inclination. Being Lutheran as you are. I hope that you'll approach that person and greet that person and get to know who that person is. Because it may well be that that's a relationship that can be important to you. When I think of the church, I think that what separates the church of Jesus Christ from the numerous service organizations that do good work in our community is this. It is that we believe that Jesus Christ coming to us, approaching us, touching us, loving us, forgiving us, empowers us to do things that we could not do or unable to do apart from His touch. So I encourage you to allow Christ to touch you, to embolden you, to come and meet this new person. You know, there's lots of ways to do that. But one of the things that I think is really helpful is, first of all, in the line, tell him your name, or her your name. because it's likely to be an older person like myself. I'm going to need to have you tell me a few times before it really sticks. So introduce yourself to them. If you're in the church during the week, stop in the office, say hello, sit down with them for a few minutes, and share a little bit of your story. They'll be interested. They'll be eager to hear. If you have a chance during the week to have lunch, that person's going to, they would love to have lunch with you. I know that's, when I have a chance to sit down for a few minutes with somebody, that's where I really get to know people. That's why one of the first things I did was start to gather a group of the fellows who would gather for lunch. And we've become very close just by sitting together and getting to know one another, hearing one another's stories back and forth. Those are things you can do to enable that relationship and kind of kick-start it into the future. Now, well, I hope that Christ's Spirit will empower each of you, embolden you to seek out that new one in your midst, for by doing so, some have entertained angels unawares, as the Scripture says. You know, that Greek word that here is translated angels literally means messenger. The angel is a messenger of God. One of the things I've learned in my ministry through the years is that a messenger is of absolutely no use until that messenger is given standing. You can't hear the message until you give that messenger standing. A pastor can't do any good, certainly can't help anyone, unless that person who is in need gives the pastor standing, gives them an insight into their life by inviting them into a relationship. That's something that you can do. Now, some of you over the last couple of years, as we've built a relationship, you've given me that standing. And in so doing, we've built a relationship. That relationship, for some of us, has not only been enjoyable, but has become important. And maybe done some good along the way. I guess for me, as I think about my life in the church, that's what's really been important, is relationships. Music's great, programming's great, but what they do, hopefully, is support relationships. For me, the Church of Jesus Christ is the place where we come to exercise our relationship with the holy, where we come to be touched by Christ's risen Spirit, where we come together to feel the love of Jesus. And in so doing, then we're given the power to love one another. And so I invite you for one last go-round. Come to the table of grace, to share in that moment when Jesus embraces us, brings us ever closer. Allow him to forgive you, to fill you with love, so that you can in turn and love others in his stead.